boy, you are all go about this Auckland War Memorial thing. I love the story, and I asked actually Duncan Grieve from the spin-off on to talk about it. He said, no, I'll just let it speak for itself. And it's almost like I had to write the story because I saw it was story, even though it takes down all my woke mates or the woke culture that I represent. And it does in some ways. But it is such a good example of cancel culture and the climate of fear that many in this country have been living in. And it's an example of how that climate of fear of being socially cancelled leads organisations to give away their power and make very dumb decisions. So I hope actually that maybe they can get this exhibition back for all you Harry Potter nutters. Our next guest, I wonder if he's a Harry Potter fan. Bryce, are you a Harry Potter fan?
Oh, I've enjoyed watching the movies, yeah.
Okay. They started as books, Bryce, I hate to tell you.
My kids have read them, yes.
Your kids have? Okay.
Yes.
Look, Bryce Edwards joins us from political lecturer at Victoria University, the Democracy Project. Bryce, it's been a while, but boy, I guess we've all been busy watching, the speeding train, the mainstream media would say speeding train wreck, that is this government sitting under urgency. They didn't quite get there on the fair pay repeal last night. But they've kind of, last night at the gallery party, everyone was saying, we wish they'd just stop so we could all go on holiday. There's been quite a lot going on, hasn't there?
Yeah, I think the last time we talked, things were going very slowly with the formation.
Yeah, that's right, with the coalition agreements. Yeah.
And I thought that was a pretty bad sign for this government being a bit lacklustre. But no, they've turned it around and they're straight into business. They're pretty much doing what they said they would do. So, some of us might agree or disagree with some of this, their policies, but it is
what they said they'd do. And apart from the smoking thing, Bryce, which someone did a deal somewhere in a smoke-free room, apart from that, there's nothing in this government's agenda that they didn't talk about on the election campaign, or one of the parties didn't, right?
Oh, pretty much, yeah, that's right. So, and that's good for democracy to have parties actually implementing policies that are well signalled, and we've had a bit of a disruption in the last 3 years with that, with things like Three Waters and lots of other co-governance issues that have come out of nowhere. I don't think the public can really complain about a democratic deficit at this stage.
Well, they voted for it for this government, didn't they?
Well, the majority did, that's right. So, But even the ones that didn't vote for it, that's democracy. And
tell that to the mainstream media, Bryce, because if anyone's running opposition, it's journalists.
Well, it's good to have a media that critiques the government of the day, that holds them to account, that, gives different perspectives on these things.
It's not good to have a media that screams racist at an administration when it's been in power less than a week.
Oh, look, I think there's always room for that critique of governments. But yeah, I certainly do agree that we've gone from having 6 years where at times the media has been rather sycophantic or gone very lightly on decisions the government has made, to now really doing a U-turn and tightening up and really giving this new government a hard time. So, look, I've never seen anything like how much scrutiny a new government has been under. And like I say, it's a good thing, but it does seem curiously different to what other governments have had. So,
yeah, well, inevitably, and Winston Peters isn't going to better. You've been bribed. And I think that kind of got the government off to a bad hat because, of course, I think most of the frontline journalists didn't quite know what their bosses had signed them up to. I think it's an interesting point. I'm going to replay next week or maybe even tomorrow a piece I did in January of this year laying out what the criteria were to get money out of the government. I thought the story didn't get the coverage at the time. Would you, and it doesn't matter legally, do you think they got bribed?
In a very wide sense of being bribed, maybe. I didn't think those agreements had integrity, and I can't really blame those media for taking them, but they did certainly have things that, they had strings attached, and those strings attached did, I think, have an influence on how the media orientated to some of those agendas.
Yeah.
How much, I don't know, because I guess this is my point, that the media has kind of morphed in recent decades to become more and more kind of a cohesive, I think I've talked about this before with you, Sean, professional managerial class. They are of the same sort of like mind as the government departments, people running the Labour Party and Green parties, that they do see the world in a certain way. And, it's a very sort of middle-class liberal view of the world. And so journalists increasingly, they're part of a resistance to this new government. And they see it as their kind of moral duty to stand up for their worldview, which is pretty much a bicultural...
Woke, I think is the word. No, I'm allowed to use that word.
Agenda. Yeah. I think so. And so some media outlets more than others are taking that approach. Yeah. And you'll see it in the public service as well. Again, I don't think it's too early to say, but I don't think we've ever seen a new government and a public service so far apart from each other and possibly going to be at war. And we're seeing that with the leaks, we're seeing that with the resignation.
Look, come on, those two leaks, I mean, they were hardly going to bring the government down, but the headline said government in shock. The government wasn't in shock, it didn't give a toss.
No. Well, it was a bit shocking to have a public service leaking stuff that there wasn't a lot of merit in the leaks. This wasn't whistleblower stuff. No. And so, these things, public service...
But the headline screeched that we were on the verge of the government collapsing, and that's...
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. And
where they do themselves no favours.
And I don't blame the media for publishing those leaks, so they should. But those public servants really should not be leaking those things at all. Yeah. It was not professional. There's a role for leaks, and especially whistleblowing, but none of those cabinet papers...
Well, look, the other interesting thing, and I'm really interested in your take on this, Richard Wagstaff and the CTU... we weren't consulted about the rollback of the free pay agreements. Well, yes, you were. There was an election. They said, this is what we're going to do, and it was in the coalition agreement. Has he got any point in saying, you should have talked to us, we've got a right? Well, it's sort of like the Greens turning up with petitions against this and that. We've had a petition. It was called the voting booth, and it delivered a result. Get used to it.
Look, it's important that unions and any NGOs or stuff that oppose anything the government's doing to come out and provide a critique and be the opposition. That's, and likewise the Labour, Green and Te Pāti Māori Party, they must oppose a lot of these things strongly if they believe that, if they're against them. But yeah, in terms of the CTU, they were kind of reaching, grasping for straws about what they're opposing, and they just came up with some sort of process complaint. Whereas they should have just been complaining about the substance of it, really. Yeah.
That the country would collapse and the government was killing people, killing low... they ran an ad on the front page of the Post. Did you see that, saying basically the new government's stolen Christmas? Did you see that?
No, I didn't actually, but...
Wednesday, CTU wrap around on the Post newspaper, Merry Christmas, was basically saying the repeal of the free trade agreements would destroy Christmas.